welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to be reviewing this book, Mockingbird, which is by Kathyrn Erskine. It's an American YA novel, so it's aimed at teenagers, and it's about a young girl called Caitlin who has Asperger's, and about how Caitlin comes to terms with the loss of her brother in a school shooting. So Caitlin is 10 years old, and her older brother Devon was killed in a school shooting, as I just mentioned, and Caitlin is trying to come to terms with his loss through seeking closure. The book's title, Mockingbird, alludes to the Harper Lee adult novel To Kill a Mockingbird, which, as it so happens, I am actually currently reading, as this book has inspired me to read the To Kill a Mockingbird, which I'm currently reading at the moment. Now, a mockingbird symbolises an innocent person who is exposed to evil and possibly harmed or even destroyed through that contact. Caitlin mirrors Scout in the Lee novel, as she is exposed to evil and ignorance, but comes out the other end with all her good qualities intact. Her brother Devon, another mockingbird, was destroyed by evil. The novel is therefore a tale of redemption and progress. In terms of its representation of autism, I felt that it was not as nuanced or as critical of stereotype as the book Can You See Me that I reviewed previously. The very first page's definition of Asperger's is telling, as it calls it a rare and mild autistic disorder. Yet, as anyone with Asperger's will tell you, there is nothing mild, or there's nothing mild about Asperger's. Asperger's is actually a pretty, can be pretty severe actually, and it's not as rare as was originally thought. So this interpretation is strange, considering the book was published. When was it published? It was quite recent that it was published. Yes, 2010. So it says here, yes, it was published in 2010 and first published in the UK in 2012. So not that long ago, really. So I thought, that wasn't really very accurate. Now, Caitlin loves words and often consults her dictionary to try and help her understand the world. I can relate to this because I love words myself, to the point of being hyperverbal. In actual fact, being very able verbally was actually, when we still had Asperger's, of course it's all now been subsumed into the wider autism spectrum conditions, but when Asperger's still existed, the actual kind of hallmark of Asperger's was seen to be someone who was actually very, very verbal, very verbally able. So that's quite characteristic of the syndrome, I would say. Caitlin does not make eye contact and is very literal. Being literal is of course one of the hallmarks of autism, yet Caitlin is extremely literal, almost to the point of caricature. I think a more subtle presentation of this quirk would have been more realistic, because I did feel it was kind of a bit exaggerated and possibly, rather stereotypical, this presentation. Not because it was inaccurate per se, because like I said, autistic people almost by definition are literal, and many, not all, autistic people do struggle with eye contact. But it was just I think the kind of exaggeration of those traits was where it became a bit stereotypical. I could relate when, on page 25, Caitlin's counsellor says that you can see emotion in people's eyes. Caitlin replies by saying, "I can't. Eyes always look the same to me." It baffles me that people can detect emotion in the eyes, so I could completely understand Caitlin's reaction to that. So what do you think? I mean, I can't see any real emotion in the eyes. I would say possibly with the exception of my dad, but that's only because I've spent a lot of time with my dad, and over the years I've gradually, like for example, sometimes I've started to gradually work out when all's not quite well with him, because he does have quite a kind of clear look when he's starting to get stressed, but that's only because I've known my dad for such a long time now. But with him aside, pretty much, you know, generally speaking, I just can't read faces unless it's like really, really obvious. So yeah, so what do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Caitlin, unlike Tally in Can You See Me, has screaming meltdowns at school, so she does not mask her autism very well and is a lot more obvious and stereotypical in her behaviour than Tally, because Tally in Can You See Me never had meltdowns at school, but she did have meltdowns at home. So Tally was far more subtle in her presentation of autism when she was out at school than Caitlin is. But obviously, you know, some autistic kids do display meltdowns at school, so, you know, it's not that this is unrealistic, it's just that I did feel that the author was going out of her way to kind of describe a very obvious, very stereotypical version of autism, which, of course, is autism for some, but it's not necessarily autism for everyone. So that's where it, as I say, maybe could have been a little bit more subtle, a bit more nuanced, might have made the book a bit more relatable, I would say. Caitlin reads years above her level, which is relatable to me, as this was the case with me at school, although I had minimal understanding of what I was reading. Caitlin says on page 41 that books are safe, they don't change like people, something I can understand and relate to. Although Caitlin does not mask as much as Tally, she does try to make eye contact because she has been told to do this. Now, so I can relate to this too. People then might think you are making good eye contact, but in reality, you are only doing it mechanically with no real comprehension. I was a little bit inconsistent with my eye contact as a child. I did struggle with eye contact, and I still do. And, it actually said on my school report, it actually said, you know, teachers had obviously picked up that I had what they call poor eye contact, but again, kind of rather inconsistently. It later said in the same report, when the educational psychologist was assessing me, that her eye contact was felt to be good, however. So, you know, the same report, two different verdicts on my eye contact, which just goes to show that, you know, it's not a consistent thing. As autistics, we do struggle with eye contact, but that can vary across settings, I guess, depending on how relaxed we are, how comfortable we are. But whether or not we can read the eyes, you know, that's another matter entirely. You know, just because you might be glancing at someone's eyes and appearing to make good eye contact in that particular setting, doesn't mean you're actually looking at the eyes in a way that a non-autistic person does to get information from the eyes. So I think that, you know, that is very important to understand. You know, there's far more to eye contact than just looking at someone's eyes. It's what you do with that information, what you're getting out of it. So I'm now going to move on to part 2 to carry on this review of Mockingbird by Kathyrn Erskine. So moving on to video number 2 now.